Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to yet another episode of the BTP Podcast. We've been away for a while. I have for sure. But I am back with a very great friend of mine, Tugrul Guner. And I am happy to introduce him to you. What a legendary man he is. He had, okay, you know what? I'm not going to give you the introduction. I'll let him introduce himself the way he sees fit. Hey, Tugrul, how are you doing?
I'm good. By the way, legendary, huh?
Oh
Nice,
yeah,
thank
no.
you.
No. I know you well enough to give you that, give you that adjective. So that's all well deserved
Mhm.
for sure. All right, Turl. So why don't you give us a very brief but comprehensive background about yourself, the way you see yourself, from your academic background, personally. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I will start with when everything changed in my life.
Oh,
I was like, I was not care about anything before like last year of my high school.
yeah.
So I was like playing video games, going out like playing soccer,
Hmm.
and the classes were like I had zero interest at all. But
Okay.
one day I was reading a lot. I was kind of reading lots of different books, different type of books, mostly like fantasy books, like Dragonlance series, Forgotten Realms. It all started with the Lord of the Rings, by the way.
Mm.
Yeah. Anyway, but that was also another story. My father, like, I gave that present to me, like a Lord of the Rings book, but the second book. He just grabbed a random book from there, probably like just grabbed the second book, and then what's this? Like, let me read the first one. Then I started with the Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
But back then I was reading this Dan Brown's book called Demons and Angels, or vice versa,
All
Angels
right.
and Demons. I don't know,
Angels.
like I
Yeah, I'm
forgot
not
that.
sure.
Yeah,
I
I
actually
mean,
haven't read the book, but I've watched the movie. Okay, go ahead.
yeah, I've also watched the movie, but I don't know. Like, it was a good book. I'm not sure, but the thing that just like was interesting to me when they were talking about like antimatter.
Mm.
So I just like stuck at that point, like, oh my god, what is this? Like, I never heard of this before. Antimatter. Like, I wasn't even interested in physics. Can you
Okay. Oh, so
imagine? Like,
you
I
weren't
mean,
interested.
no. But antimatter was like something changed. What? I never heard of this before, and I realized that. I mean, we have lots of things we don't know.
Mm.
That was the like a break point in my life. Okay, we're just pretending that we know stuff that
Yo.
based on our observations.
Mhm.
These are like a macro systems that we are observing daily, like mostly like being like a Newton laws, thus we all know. So we just aware of that. Like, I mean, if you drop something, it just falls down like it's a gravity. I mean, like this kind of stuff. But that was something different.
Mm.
You can observe it. You need to be in that field to know what is antimatter. So then
Right.
that was some kind of like a break point in my life. Okay, then I started to read couple of things about it. Then I noticed that oh my god, this is something else. There is another world in the inside of this, like quantum mechanics. Even though I had no idea what quantum mechanics is, but I was like reading uncertainty principles. Something is not clear, but something sounds or like interesting. Like, oh my
Yeah.
god, what's happening here? Like, a universe is not we like observe, it's something more and more. I mean, then last year in my high school, I developed interest in the physics, as you
Mhm.
expect. Like, then I was like, for the my bachelor degree, I had to study physics, and
Okay.
I have to become a theoretical physics physicist. I mean, because I really wanted to understand everything.
Mhm.
That didn't happen, of course. But I'm gonna mention that. I'm gonna talk about it soon. So
Okay.
in 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 my country, for bachelor degree, you have to take an exam, and
Mhm.
after the exam, you need to write the university and discipline, like this university physics, this university, for example,
I
electrical and
see.
electronics
Okay, so
engineer.
to give it a slight background, so when you're originally from Turkey, so
Hmm.
you did your bachelor's there, and
Yes,
that's okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, my master's and PhD there too. But
Right.
so so you have a limits, of course. So you can just write 20 university and 20 different disciplines. So I wrote
Mhm.
physics for all of them because I was like obsessed. So yeah, I just got into physics, but it was kind of disappointing. Like, okay, I was kind of I mostly like thinking about this ideas, thinking about how universe should work, and this kind of like a philosophical way of uh, like a discussions. I kind of mostly like that way of it, but mathematics, when it starts to become complicated,
Yeah.
you start to lose control of your thoughts also sometimes. Like if
Mm.
it gets too complicated, you start to focus mostly on the mathematics to solve that
Yeah.
problem. You're getting away from your first idea, and you can find yourself with into different concepts, different mathematical tools. Of course it can guide you different discoveries, of course, but
Yeah.
you need to have that skill to have fun with this mathematics. I
Yeah.
didn't have that one, so still I was like kind of stubborn. So I wanted to do my master's degree also in physics, which I did the quantum mechanics fundamentals, which was focusing on the foundations of it, like a main things, like a
Mhm.
fundamental things. So we published a paper about quantum tunneling because there was a problem about estimating time in quantum mechanics, and tunneling is a phenomenon that happens in time,
Right.
even though there were people, that researchers like um, arguing about maybe it's instantaneous, maybe it's not time dependent, but we found the time for that, which we published. It was a nice journey for me, but then I changed my topic, like very like a 100, well, like 180 degrees, like just backward, like a different direction,
Okay.
which I started to do my uh, like a PhD in material science and engineering. It's
You
totally
know,
irrelevant compared
you
to
know
physics.
the way you say it was 180 degrees deviation, one would think this is a you went to arts and you became a full-on artist. No, I'm kidding. Within the realm of physics, you did a 180. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was completely like changed my direction. Like, I mean, um, or you can also call it 90 degrees too. I mean, I was just like I was like spanning somewhere else. Um, yeah, I started to work on some applications. I was kind of material scientist. I was working on polymers, polymer composites, uh, emissive materials. Like I was mostly working on alternative materials for the white LEDs, because in LEDs, in especially white LEDs, we are using phosphors, which they contain like rare earth elements. So I was trying to develop new materials or trying to increase the efficiency of the this phosphor materials inside the tube. It was nice. It was a efficient PhD. Like I published like kind of 20 papers because it's an application. It's not a theoretical physicist. So it was kind of like it's highly likely like you can publish papers as long as you develop something and you show there's an increase, there's improvement, it works, or
Right.
you can come up with a new material, which
Mhm.
we were there was like one kind of material was very popular back then. We even published like a couple of papers about it called halide perovskites. Yeah, so I was kind of like optimistic about my postdoc because like a 20 papers, so I was like, okay, I can find a good postdoc position around the world, but it didn't go that way. I applied like 600, 700 positions with the detailed
Wow.
applications. I didn't get a response from most of it. Probably some. I did even send the secondary email to them, but probably they went unnoticed. Like
Mhm.
one of them, just he's a Turkish professor also. He's a professor in Montreal. Um,
Montreal, Canada, for
yes,
those who are
that's
wondering.
Montreal in Canada. So that's
Yeah.
he sent me like the position, and I offered me the postdoc position, which was an amazing subject. Um, It's called ultra-fast electron transmission electron microscopy,
Mm.
which transmission electron microscopy by itself is a characterization tool that can image materials at nanoscale, which is like 10 to the minus, it's like how much, like 1000 lower magnitudes, higher magnitudes than the human hair. I think 1000. It was micron, so probably around 1000.
Wow.
Smaller things from the human hair, even more. I don't know, like probably some that kind of scale.
Mm-hmm.
So we were basically imaging nanomaterials at the nanoscale, like we were characterizing them, trying to understand their shape, some of their properties. But this is a regular transmission electron microscopy. Ultra-fast transmission electron microscopy is where you are integrating your microscopy with laser.
Mm.
Now, you don't only have this imaging, you also have this laser, uh, which you can also send it to your material and observe what's happening when your matter or nanoparticles are interacting with the laser,
Mm-hmm.
which brings, we call it the time dependency for your observations, which is from imaging. Now you start to record movies and you can visualize what they're doing under some interaction of laser in time.
Mm-hmm.
So, by the way, my professor's professor in Caltech, his name was like Zevail. He like got the Nobel Prize for this invention. Mostly,
Wow.
he got the Nobel Prize for femtochemistry, but this was the part of the invention.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, that in today in the world there are only 4 or 5 facilities that can do this ultra fast transmission electron microscopy. It's an expensive toy. After that, like studied 2.5 years in Montreal, Canada, for as a
Mm-hmm.
postdoc, and my second postdoc I came to Ottawa in Canada again.
Mm-hmm.
This time, it is a completely different lab. It is a quantum optics lab because I also like
Mm.
I am enjoying it. I know I love
Right.
quantum mechanics, so I came also like to learn quantum optics, and I was planning to also apply some of my AI skills. Of course, I don't
Mm-hmm.
have any professional skills because I didn't study AI. I didn't study machine learning in any of my degrees. But since I love AI and coding, I always like during my free time
Mm-hmm.
as a hobby. I try to improve myself a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
then I started to combine quantum optics with deep learning because in quantum optics you have noisy like results and etc. So you can combine them with the deep learning etc.
Can we take a step back? So can you tell me like what is actually quantum optics? Like can you delve into it? What does that mean? Okay, optics is the
Oh yeah,
optics and the quantum, but how do they go together?
yeah, of course I cannot explain that like an expert of it because I
No,
mostly work on the deep learning, but
and
I
even
can
if you did,
tell.
I wouldn't understand. So that's okay.
Okay, so in visual optics it's just a um, it's the light, so you don't need to have a like coherency, which I mean is that like some kind of like coherent motion or coherent interaction of your light, uh, like as a like a physicist standpoint, it's like a how can I say, like it's not random. The photons in the light, they're not acting random, they are
Mhm.
acting in a coherent way, so they have some kind of correlation between them.
Yeah.
So regular light is you don't have this. They're just like moving. They're just
Yeah.
moving like in space time. But when you're talking about quantum optics, you need to use some kind of generator of this coherent light because light itself is not generating it with the regular light sources.
Yeah.
For example, we were using different crystals. You're sending your laser to these crystals, and these crystals are so special that they create coherent light, which they are correlated in the momentum degree of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they go into 2 different paths. When you hit them with the laser, out of the crystal, you have 2 light paths.
Yeah.
One goes one direction, other goes perpendicular direction.
Mm-hmm.
The main property of these two beam is they are entangled, momentum
Oh.
entangled. So
So
if
so
one,
the so the past the crystal.
yeah, after they pass the crystal, crystal
Mm-hmm.
generates, of course, what was the efficiency of this generation? Like 8%, 10%, maybe even
Wow.
20%. I mean, it's so low. It's not that high.
So you preserve, so the light that comes up the other end of it is less than 50% of what you actually put into it, the
Yeah,
crystal.
of course. Yes,
Oh,
of course. So you have
okay.
less light now, but you see them. They are momentum in a momentum degree of freedom. They are correlated. I mean, entangled.
Right.
One is plus. One is exactly the same momentum with the negative
Right.
value of it. What we can do is that so if you observe the two beams, so imagine that you have two cameras. One is observing the one of the beams, other one is observing the other beam.
Mm-hmm.
So you have triggers for these cameras. So one photon, when one photon hits one camera, it checks exactly the same time the other one grabs any photon signal. So if the two photon hits the camera at the same time, you're saying that okay, two entangled photons arrived.
Okay.
Other than that, you're not capturing anything. These cameras are on only when two photons are photons arrive. These two different cameras at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
because of course, you're designing your optical path in such a way that they travel the same distances,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
because
Of
the
course.
speed of light is constant, so they have to travel the same distance.
Mm-hmm.
Also, there are like interesting applications of this. If you put an object in one of these beams, if you try to collect the other beam, it gives you the image of the object without touching it. What I mean is that, for example, you have two beams,
Mm-hmm.
and in one of the path of one of the beams, if you put an object, you know that, right? So some of light is gonna pass, some of them not, because they're gonna be absorbed or reflected by the object.
Yeah.
So other beam, since they're correlated and entangled, so when you get the camera, when these photons get the camera, so they're gonna be triggered only with the other photons that are passed and reach to the other camera. So you're
Okay.
gonna have a kind of image of the object with the other beam, which has nothing on this path. I mean, this kind of this is called ghost imaging. Maybe I just
Ghost
described it
imaging.
so bad that
Yeah.
I mean,
No, no, no. I think so. Yeah, yeah. No, keep going. Yeah, that's good.
yeah, I mean, it was like I was kind of trying to develop a deep learning algorithm to make the resulting images better, increase the resolution of it, because you can guess that
They're
this
very noisy, right?
they're very noisy. Yeah, no, it was a nice journey. Also, I was enjoying working with the group and professor. But so like last year, yes, not this year, right? No, this year, not last year. So I just got an
Man,
offer
these days,
from.
it's really
Mhm.
hard to keep track of time. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
exactly.
Yeah,
Thanks to COVID.
yeah.
And um, I received an offer from a company which is not related to my research background. I started to work as a machine learning operations engineer, which I used my skills that I developed uh, during my free time, which I
Yeah,
was considering them as my hobbies.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a kind of story. I mean, I am kind of like also like, not because only that was just happened in that way, not because of that, but also kind of like jumping from subject to subject,
yeah.
because
Man,
I mean there are lots of things to learn,
yep.
and I know I'm not gonna be able to learn everything that I want to learn, but still I'm trying to do my best to
Yeah,
learn as
I
much
think
as I
there's
can.
a huge degree of attention people give to, specializing in something, which is like, of course, important. I'm not debating the significance of that, but I think sometimes it gets missed how good it is to actually do these jumps between in between topics. In that it gives you a broader sense of understanding, because sometimes some knowledge that you gain in a one field, although it's not necessarily, you're not specialized, you're not an expert in that field per se, but then it can, that knowledge can be analogous in a different field, so it gives you some sort of perspective, I feel. At least that's my personal, I had a similar uh I have a similar experience, and I, even for my academic background, I had a similar experience. I didn't know really what I want to study, so I really liked physics, I really liked computer science, programming, software engineering. I don't know, I liked philosophy, I liked psychology, I liked, I even liked cinema, like I still do, photography, cinematography. So it took me a long while to land on where I landed ultimately, but so yeah, I did jump around quite a bit too, and I think it is important not to discount it. Although specialization is very important, again, I'm not doubting that, but I think sometimes when we focus, oh yeah, you have to specialize. It's um, um, what do they say? There's a good saying. Mm, yeah, I don't remember the saying, but something, and then master of none. Anywho, yeah, so it means like you know so many things, but then you're not a master in any of them. And they say that in a negative, not derogatory, but in a negative way, with a negative connotation, meaning it's a bad thing. And I understand they're saying, okay, mastery is important. Of course it is, but one of the things you can master is how to learn different things,
Mhm.
and I think that is also important. Anyways, sorry to cut you off, but I just wanted
Yeah, but
to,
you're right. I think I learned how to learn during all of this time.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right, that's right, and how to think, because again, when you become a master in one very narrow specific field, then you're very comfortable learning things in that field, but not necessarily in other fields, and you get used to and accustomed to thinking a certain way, but not another. Um, if you will, your neural pathways are like very much aligned with a certain thing. And I guess in AI, you're saying you're kind of like memorizing the training set, right? You're overfitting in a way. So
Mm.
that's the danger with over mastering in a very narrow field. I think it's my from a personal perspective. Of course, it's not going to harm anybody per se, but it can harm you mentally, not physically, of course.
Yeah. I mean, but
Anyways,
the other side of it is like, okay, then the other than that, like you also can. There's also risk that you can be like um underfitting. I mean,
yeah,
like it's like you can have some generalization issue too. I mean, you can
sure.
stay like a um not overfitting sense, but um kind of you can stay like a generalized way. How can I describe? Like you don't have, for example, for myself, I have some confidence issues too. So I never think I in my life I never think I am 100%
Yeah,
sure of anything.
yeah, no, me
Maybe
too.
that's the issue. If I got an
Yeah,
expert on some kind of special, if I have some kind of specialty, if I study or work on something like 20 years, maybe I can build that confidence at that level. But
yeah,
I,
it's tricky.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I know. It's very tricky. I think I agree with you. I don't think I know. I can be 100%. Like, I will never give that number 100. I'm 100% sure. I'm gonna, even if I'm really 100% sure, I'll always say I'm 99.999% sure.
Yeah.
And okay, but maybe that's part of it. But it's a tricky line though. There's a very fine line between confidence and arrogance, I think, and that's another issue that arises. Like when you're too much of an expert in something, you're one of the very few in the world who knows something about something. Then the ego plays a role, and then sometimes it may seem like confidence, but it is actually arrogance. And we see that, like, I mean, in academia there's plenty of it, of course. In industry there's plenty of it. There's everywhere, like there's plenty of it, right? So yeah, I know. I confidence aside, you need to like grow your confidence and all that. Of course, you, not you personally, but any like the rhetorical you, and any individual needs to grow the confidence, of course. But then there's also another aspect of it that I think, I like the fact that I remain not 100% sure on things, because I always give myself room to self-correct, to admit that I was wrong, to because, like, for example, otherwise you become like these politicians. Like, clearly they're not even sure. Like, they're not even like, if you talk to them in person, in a back room with nobody listening, no microphones, no nothing, with their buddies, for example, they're gonna be like, yeah, I don't know, maybe. But then they come out and, say it with such confidence, because that's how they have to play the game of politics, right? um but then again, but then that makes them not able to course correct, acknowledge mistakes. So I think the fact that you, myself included, like, we are, not, how do we say this, not, I'm not saying we're not sure, but we leave room for error or mistake, because that's how I look at it. It's Even if I am very much um, comfortable in the field, let's put the word expert or master aside. Even if I'm very comfortable in the field and I have sufficient knowledge, I feel uncomfortable saying that I am 100% sure that something is true or not, or and I think that's me leaving myself room that, maybe, well, I may even caveat that with saying, with the current knowledge and with my current understanding, yes, I'm 100% sure. But okay, there might be something that I don't know about. There is certainly something that I don't know about in a lot of different ways, maybe in that particular field too. And maybe there's error in the way I think about the world, because if history is any indication, um, most people, most of the time, have made mistakes. Like, I don't know any famous or infamous individual in the history that you can name that did everything perfectly. That's just outright impossible. And if the written records say that, which I have never heard of any individual, but let's say, even if the written records say that, you don't know of their hidden lives. And anyway, so that's what I think. I don't. My point is that I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. Although it can have some downfalls in, sometimes you seem, may not even, because I know you, like, you're a humble individual, and sometimes you're not comfortable uh, being super confident in your, but then, like, I know you, like, I know that the grasp of your knowledge is high enough that you, if you were an arrogant prick, you would be like, yeah, I'm 100% sure, get lost, right? So, but then you're not. That's the whole thing.
But how? I mean, I don't understand how you can be like that. How you can be 100% sure for something doesn't
Yeah.
make sense. I mean,
No,
even today
it's
we have so many questions. Even Newton dynamics, you can question them. Even
yeah.
people came up with like a modification of the Newton dynamics. You can't be 100% sure. Even your observations are like a seem full of fit with the models you have. No,
That's right.
I mean, you can miss something. Your brain evolved some millions of years as a result of like a trillions of different
Hmm.
paths, like a survival tricks, like some
Yep.
extinction, etc., etc. But you're still evolving. Your brain is
Yep.
still evolving. There are lots of, you don't know how much room left for your brain that can evolve, which
Hmm.
can be huge, which I think can be huge, because we are probably far from being like reaching the optimum point. I don't even know there's an optimum point. I don't think so
Yeah.
even that. So
Not sure. Yeah.
we are like, we have full of weaknesses, flaws, and we are not even sure that our brain is really a good tool, even like a perfect tool, even understanding nature. Maybe this is our problem. Maybe we are not going to be able to solve the universe because our brain is not capable enough of understanding it.
Yeah. No, that's
Which,
that's
again,
possible. No, I don't. I honestly don't know how you can be that. I think it's not the being too sure is a byproduct of arrogance. That's my guess. Like, because the more humble people I've seen, the less sure they seem. People who tend to be more humbled, who tend to not be arrogant or egotistical, um, they seem that, they don't seem like that they lack confidence. They're fairly confident, but they're very comfortable admitting that I don't know everything and I can't possibly know everything and I may be wrong from time to time. I may be wrong a lot of the times. I think that is, um, again, this is my observation. I don't have empirical evidence to back this hypothesis, but this is my personal observation. The more, uh, you know, grounded people I've seen, the more humble people I've seen, the less they have that ability to be like, no, this is done, this is settled, and let's take a recent something from a very recent history, and that was like during COVID, the COVID science, there was plenty of arrogance from very established either scientists or officials, the authorities of science, quote unquote, um, that they were like saying things that, this is established science, you should believe it. This is, this is true. The lab leak is not, I'm not saying that COVID leaks from the lab, but they were not even, they were treating you as either stupid or racist if you even questioned it. Um, and I was like, how can you be so sure it leaked from, not leaked from the lab and it came from nature when you don't even know the source of like the origin of species of this thing? How can you be so arrogant about it? Um, and then I gave myself the answer. I was really thinking that, and I gave myself the answer. I was like, yeah, that's arrogance. That's why. Like, there should be no room for arrogance, the human arrogance in, or any kind of arrogance, as a matter of fact. But we only know one kind, and that's the human arrogance. There should be no room for arrogance in science, but unfortunately there is. So I think that's that. I think that rather being too sure is a symptom of arrogance, or is a byproduct of arrogance. I don't know, but they go together. I think that's the way I see it.
I think this is kind of like a defense mechanism. Like
Yeah,
this kind of people, I think probably, I'm not sure, of course.
yeah.
They
Sterve our
think
lives.
that they think that
Yeah,
maybe if people start to think that there's a room of questioning their knowledge,
they
they
lose the
think
grasp.
in this case they think they're weak. So
Yeah,
that's why they are pretending that they know 100% sure. They become like arrogant. No, you cannot question my knowledge.
yeah,
So
yeah.
this is a
That
defense mechanism because they don't want to be seen weak, or maybe they have a higher position in somewhere. If they maybe they think that if they seem weak, they can lose their status, they lose their like, position, whatever.
yeah.
I think that's the opposite.
Yeah, so okay, I completely agree, but I also disagree that it's completely opposite. I think it's kind of the opposite, depending on how you, depending on the area. I think so. For um for somebody who's claiming that they are the authority, like a king or an emperor or a queen or whatever, right? So that person needs to maintain that authority. So they need to be listened to and accepted, right? Okay, so that's that. But that's why I'm saying there should be, so that's of course and they lose the grasp if they don't. They feel that way. Again, it's not necessarily true. I agree with you. If an emperor or a king was humble and was like, I'll do my best, or even a political leader, I do my best to the best of my abilities to lead, but I'm a human. I'll make mistakes. If they admitted that, they'd probably win a lot of votes. Um,
Mhm.
but that's aside, when you're talking about science and technology, specifically science, because it's uh, in my mind, it should represent something very pure, and remove the elements of human nature, but rather be a method to evaluate, to think essentially, and that's why we called it the scientific method, right? It has to leave the interpersonal like within the human character, human species ugliness out of it. Of course, it's not going to happen because it's just humans. So I think that's the specific area that I agree with you. It actually is not. If you're wrong and you admit it, that's the sign of strength. And I think people do maybe not consciously understand that themselves, or think about it that way, but they really appreciate when you admit mistake, because then they can rely on your words. Be like, you know what, this guy is not full of shit. This guy admits when he's wrong. If somebody constantly, when they caught in a lie or when they caught in a mistake, they still insist, then how can I trust them? So I think I agree with you. They just feel that they lose. It's a defense mechanism. They feel like they're losing their grasp on of authority, which is not. really true. They're losing it when they enforce it too harshly. Yeah, there was a quote, I don't remember where I heard it or who I heard it from, but basically it was saying power is like sand in your fist. The more you try to hold on to it, the easier it will spill out of your fist. And if you doubt that, just go on a beach someday, not you, anybody who's listening, and go grab a, because I thought about it and I tried it. Go grab a handful of sand, and tighten your fist rather, and squeeze. The sand will spill out. At some point, it will not, but then the more you squeeze, the more it spills out of your fist. So that's what they're doing. They feel like they have to like hold on to this sand tight and make sure it doesn't spill out of their fist. But then doing that, they're actually squeezing it out of their fist, because by tightening their fist, they're occupying the room that the sand should. Ergo, the sand will spill out because their fingers will not, you know, break. They're not gonna squeeze that tight. Anyways, so I agree with you. Um, but the issue is that the thinking is wrong, I think.
Yeah, but I think, yeah, I think the root of this behavior is probably we can investigate, like we can discuss it in evolutionary way.
Yeah.
Probably because of the past, like not too long, like if you go to check the history, even go like the ancestors,
Mm-hmm.
uh, being sure is probably this is about like a living or death issue, life or death issue. Basically, you have to be
Absolutely.
sure for a couple of things, really, because otherwise you can die. I mean, somebody can
Right. Okay.
hunt
Oh,
you. So maybe it is rooted somewhere there, this kind of behavior, because it instinctively you want to think that you're sure, you have to be sure.
yes. You
Or
want
this
to
is
be,
like you have to strong, you have to
yes,
seem strong.
because if you're not so sure, you remain indecisive, and that's can
Of
be
course,
deadly.
that's
Yeah.
it's worse than being so sure in the
Yeah.
past, like in an evolutionary point of view, probably. But
So this.
sorry,
Yeah.
interrupting you.
Yeah.
But
Sorry. No.
what
No.
I
Go ahead.
was thinking is that, like, when I was saying the opposite is better, like not
Mm,
being sure, I was just thinking in the future. So we already evolved, we already have some complex understanding, we already are not in the part of nature anymore. We are not scared of like hunted by like a tiger on the way, but so we are even like not naturally but like artificially selected, because we
yep.
have health system, everybody is surviving.
Mm-hmm.
So future, because we don't have these issues anymore, which is good, which means that we have a long way to ahead of us that can focus only on humans future, like including science, technology, etc. So we are also like complex enough to think about our thoughts. We are a
Yeah.
machine that can question itself,
Mm,
and so we are at this level, and so we can start acting like in a mental, in a, we have to start thinking that we have lots of rooms that we can improve ourselves and we
mm-hmm.
can learn a lot. We no need to be so sure for everything. We are not
Yep.
gonna die.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is where I classify. Actually, I have this because I've
Mm,
thought about this, and I wasn't thinking about it right now, but I have thought about this in the past. I actually have. I call it. I mean, I don't have a literal definition out there, but I have internal definition. I call it. These are two different things, though. One is how sure I am in theory versus how sure I am practically. So how sure I am in theory? Okay, in theory, nobody's chasing me. I have all the time in the world to doubt myself. In practice, in real life, when you're facing life or death, or matters of extreme importance that can be very costly, either monetary or matter of life and literally matter of life and death, then it becomes important. So then when it's in practice, then I think you should basically act on the best information you have.
mhm,
That's it.
mhm.
Like the highest confidence degree you have about anything, you just act on it. That's it. You're done. You don't need to think it twice or three times. My point is that you can. I agree with you. It's probably something evolved in us, but you can still, even in that environment, in a chaotic west world, or even
Mhm.
you know, um, rules of the jungle kind of thing, you can still uh, have this element of I'm not so sure about everything and still survive, so long as you're like, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm 90% sure, and that 90% is above everything else I'm sure about, so I'm going to act on that knowledge. That's fine. That'll get you out of it. And actually that probably gets you out of it the best, because you're not acting on a random information. You're acting on the information that you have the highest confidence in. You're most sure about, basically. But you don't have to say I'm 100% sure about that. You just have to be like, I'm sure enough that I'm going to act on it. And then the question comes, okay, now I'm sure about something 90%, and you're sure about something somewhat number of a percent, and we have to do one or the other, and then we get into a fight about who's more
Mhm.
sure. So it becomes messy. I understand. That's what I'm trying to say. But anyway, so that's a theoretical doubting of yourself, and then the practical being sure of yourself. It's yes, I agree. Sometimes being
Mhm.
indecisive, because when you don't choose, that's a choice. Sometimes people don't choose because they're terrified of their choice, and then that's the choice itself. They don't choose because they feel if they don't choose, they can't make a mistake. But then that's the mistake itself, because by not choosing, you're choosing. Anyways, not to get too philosophical, but
Mhm.
I agree. I think it's evolved to be in us, because if we weren't so sure, then we were indecisive. We would be eaten by bears and tigers and such. So
Yeah, and also I think we just recently learned what does that mean, that being sure. I think
yeah,
it just came with the, like a science and technology
perhaps yes.
understanding about how we can so sure about something. This came with some philosophical questions, because other than that,
I actually
before,
not.
how we can question about being sure, because you don't know what is it. I mean, being sure, what does that mean
I
before than
think
that?
there is a meaning before science in the past. Like, okay, if we take it to before 2,000 years,
Before, like a philosophical, let's go to antique Greek
ten
people,
thousand.
like
Oh,
yeah,
but the Greeks would do the same thing. They would disprove each other, right? They would, but by
yeah,
simple
but that,
methods. But they were doing science still. I grant that. But let's go even further back. Let's go 10,000 years ago. I think there was a degree of being sure and unsure, and I think that was linked to discovery, because let's say a caveman that went out of the cave and they were debating. It's like, no, I'm sure there's something beyond this hill. I gotta go see it. And the other guy was like, how can you be so sure? I don't know. Like, there is nothing beyond that hill, and you're gonna die, and we're gonna starve in the cave because you're the hunter. So I think
no,
there was a
sorry, I don't agree. I think that
okay,
my story is like a guy who is like a strongest one on this, like a society that they have, just decides instinctively, everybody follows. There was no debate, probably.
right, but then
I
he
mean,
can personally be shown that his confidence was false. For example, he's sure that there's there's nothing beyond the hill, but then to prove himself, he goes, and then he learns, oh, there's something beyond the hill. So I was wrong.
yeah, I
Then
agree. I agree. Probably like
on a
this
personal
kind
level,
of like a initial level of being sure, being
very
not being
minor,
sure, but
yeah.
they didn't question it. They
Yes,
didn't
no,
know
no,
this
no,
is.
no. I don't. I think you may be right. I think it started from the ancient Greeks when they started philosophizing and thinking
Yeah.
semi-scientifically. Yes, I
Yeah,
think you may
because
be
you
right.
have different information to be
Uh-huh.
understanding. Okay, for the same concept, we have two ideas. Okay, which one is correct? Then you can think about, okay, how we can be so sure about which one is more correct. I mean, compared to
Yeah,
others. Maybe you
I
need a comparison for ideas at least.
yeah yeah.
I don't know. Like, I mean, I'm
I
just like,
think I think for that, as far as we know, at least as far as I personally know, I think for that you have to. We can only go as far as the ancient Greeks, probably. I
yeah,
think you
probably,
may
yeah,
be right. We cannot, or maybe we just don't know about it because it wasn't well documented. Who knows?
yep.
Again,
Mhm.
I'm not sure.
You never know. I mean, you have to go there and observe it.
Even then, you know,
Yeah.
you never
Because
know.
we are creating stories based on our findings
Yeah,
from like fossils, etc., like
yep,
drawings on the
yep,
cave. They're all good models, but they are stories still, like
yep.
backed by evidences, but that everything can be can still satisfy like all these findings, but in a different way too. You never know. You have to go there and observe it with a time
Yeah.
machine, which is not possible. But yeah, I mean, that's what all I got. All we got.
Yeah, and these are very interesting questions, and I think we should explore them more. And I'm very happy that we're going to do this. Well, okay, so for the audience who are wondering, we will be doing more of these kinds of episodes. Now, this was introductory for us to, discuss with Tugrul, get to know him and who he is, where he came from academically, because not that, not in the sense that academia is very important, but because first of all, you spend a lot of your life there, and second of all, because I think that kind of tells you what your interests are, where you're coming from, where your perspective is at. So this was the introductory episode, but we'll continue these discussions, probably from maybe a little bit more narrowed, and talk about specific things in the future episodes. But for now, before we come to a close, is there something you want to talk about, whether about yourself or about what we talked about or about anything really, before we close for this episode?
No, no.
No?
I mean,
Okay.
I enjoyed this a lot, so I'm just
I
looking
think so.
forward to other episodes that we can discuss a lot.
Yeah,
But I wasn't expecting to talk about cavemen,
me
to be honest.
neither. That's the beauty of it. I think I do like some structure in the podcasts, but I don't. And I know everybody has a different style, and I like those who are super structured and those who are completely unstructured. But for myself, I like to be surprised in my conversations, in a way that, as you said, I didn't expect to be talking about cavemen.
Yeah,
So, anyways,
chaos is good.
yeah, there's a degree of chaos, and too much control may ruin it
Mhm.
a little bit, just so it's ordered enough that it makes sense. Okay, so with that, thank you all for listening, and thank you, Thurl, for joining us with the promise of many more of these kinds
Yep,
of
sure,
episodes.
of course, of course. I'm looking
Yes,
forward to it. Thank you.
fantastic. And thank you all for tuning in. Tune in for more episodes in the weeks and months to come. Cheers, everybody. Bye.